In the early 1920s, the world of aviation was a new and exciting place. After the First World War, many small airlines started in Britain. However, they found it very hard to make money. The British government knew that having a strong national airline was important. It was important for trade, for communication, and for connecting the vast British Empire. To solve this problem, the government decided to create one big airline. It would be strong and reliable. This new airline would receive money from the government to help it grow and succeed in its important mission. The Instone Airline, Handley Page Transport, Daimler Airway, and British Marine Air Navigation Company Limited. This merger created a single powerful company. Its main base was at Croydon Airport in London, which was the city's main international airport at the time. The government gave Imperial Airways a subsidy of £1 million over 10 years to develop air routes that would link Britain with its colonies and dominions across the globe, from Africa to Asia and Australia. The new airline began its work immediately. Its first task was to establish regular and dependable services. In the beginning, these services were mostly to European cities like Paris, Brussels and Zurich. The aircraft they used were biplanes, such as the Handley Page W8B. These planes were slow by today's standards, but they were the cutting edge of technology back then. They represented a new era of travel, promising speed and a new perspective on the world. Imperial Airways was not just an airline, it was a symbol of British ambition and a tool for maintaining the unity of the empire in a changing world. The vision for Imperial Airways was grand. It was seen as the chosen instrument of the government's imperial policy. The airline was expected to carry mail, government officials, and important business people across enormous distances. This would make the empire feel smaller and more connected. Before air travel, a journey from London to India could take weeks by sea. Imperial Airways aimed to reduce that time to just a few days. This mission was deeply woven into the airline's identity, influencing everything from its choice of routes to the design of its aircraft and the services it offered to its passengers on these pioneering journeys. Imperial Airways' most important job was to create air links across the British Empire. These were not just flight paths, they were lifelines of communication and commerce. The airline methodically planned and opened routes that stretched from London to the farthest corners of the globe. One of the first major long-distance routes was to India. This journey was an adventure in itself, broken into many stages. Passengers would fly across Europe, then connect to a flying boat to cross the Mediterranean and continue by land and air across the Middle East. This complex network was a massive achievement of logistics and planning in the early days of aviation. The most famous of these routes was the Kangaroo Route to Australia. This incredible journey, established in the 1930s, took around 12 days to complete. Passengers would travel on a mix of different aircraft types. The journey started from London and involved over 30 stops for refueling and overnight stays. It was a long and tiring trip, but it was revolutionary. It cut the travel time from Britain to Australia from over a month by ship to less than 2 weeks by air. This route became a symbol of Imperial Airways' global reach and its ability to conquer vast distances, connecting families and businesses like never before. To fly these long routes, Imperial Airways used special aircraft. In the early days, they used large biplanes like the Armstrong Whitworth Argosy and the Handley Page HP-42. The HP-42 was famous for its safety and comfort, even if it was slow. Later, the airline introduced the magnificent Short Empire flying boats. These aircraft could land on water, which was very useful because many parts of the empire had harbours but no runways. The flying boats were like flying hotels, offering a level of space and luxury that was hard to match. They became iconic symbols of this golden age of air travel. The airline also created a famous logo, the Speedbird. This elegant, streamlined bird symbol was designed in 1932. It represented speed, grace, and the freedom of flight. The Speedbird was put on the nose of every Imperial Airways aircraft. It became one of the most recognized logos in the world. It was a promise of quality and a mark of the airline's status as a leader in international aviation. The design was so successful and timeless that it was later adopted by the airline's successor, BOAC, and continued to be used in some form by British Airways for many decades, a lasting tribute to Imperial's legacy. Flying with Imperial Airways in the 1930s was a very luxurious experience, very different from flying today. The airline focused on comfort, not on fitting as many people as possible into the plane. On board the large Handley Page HP-42 aircraft, passengers sat in seats that were more like armchairs. The cabins were often decorated in an Art Deco style with wood paneling and fine fabrics. There was plenty of room to walk around. On the short Empire flying boats, passengers had even more space, with separate cabins, a promenade deck where they could stretch their legs, and a dedicated lounge and dining area. The service on board was exceptional. Passengers were treated like guests in a fine hotel. Full multi-course meals were served on proper china with silver cutlery. Stewards in smart uniforms attended to every need, serving drinks and snacks throughout the journey. Because the flights were slow and involved many stops, the journey was part of the holiday. Passengers would often dine and sleep in hotels on the ground overnight. This made the trip less tiring and allowed travelers to see different parts of the world along the way. It was a civilized and leisurely way to travel, reserved for the wealthy and important. However, this golden age of travel came with significant risks. Early aviation was still a dangerous business. Aircraft were less reliable than they are today, and navigation technology was basic. Pilots often had to fly by looking at maps and landmarks on the ground. Bad weather, such as storms or fog, was a major threat and could force a plane to turn back or make an emergency landing. Mechanical failures were also more common. The engines could fail, or other parts of the aircraft could break during a flight. Every journey was an adventure, but it was one that carried real danger for both passengers and crew. Imperial Airways experienced several serious accidents during its history. These crashes were tragic events, but the airline was committed to learning from them. Each accident was investigated carefully to find out what went wrong. These investigations led to important improvements in aircraft design, maintenance procedures, and pilot training. For example, after a crash caused by a structural failure, engineers would work to make the aircraft stronger. Lessons learned from navigation errors led to the development of better instruments. In this way, the tragic losses helped to build the foundations of modern aviation safety, making flying safer for future generations. As the 1930s came to an end, the world was changing rapidly. The threat of another war in Europe was growing. The British government realized that air transport would be vital for the war effort. It decided that the country needed one state-owned airline to manage all of its international air services. This would make it easier to control and direct the nation's air fleet for military and strategic purposes. In November 1939, the government passed an act to merge Imperial Airways with another smaller airline, British Airways Limited, which had focused on routes to Europe. This marked the end of an era for Imperial Airways as a private company. The merger officially created a new entity, the British Overseas Airways Corporation, or BOAC. This new airline started operations on 1st 1940. BOAC inherited the routes, the aircraft, and the experienced staff of Imperial Airways. It also inherited the famous Speedbird logo, which became the symbol of BOAC for its entire existence. During the Second World War, BOAC played a crucial role, flying important people, mail, and cargo to support the Allied forces. The expertise and global network built by Imperial Airways proved to be an invaluable asset to the nation during this critical period of history. After the war, BOAC continued to be Britain's main long-haul international airline. It pioneered routes with new jet aircraft like the de Havilland Comet and the Boeing 707. The spirit of Imperial Airways lived on through BOAC's commitment to connecting Britain with the world. In 1974, BOAC merged with British European Airways to form the company we know today as British Airways. This means that the history of Britain's modern national carrier can be traced all the way back to the founding of Imperial Airways in 1924. The legacy of those early pioneers is still visible in the roots and reputation of British Airways. The legacy of Imperial Airways is immense. It was more than just an airline. It was a pioneer that helped to invent long-distance air travel. It proved that it was possible to run regular services across continents. It developed standards of passenger comfort that set the bar for the entire industry. The lessons learned from its successes and its tragic accidents helped to make flying much safer for everyone. Imperial Airways connected the British Empire in a way that had never been possible before, shrinking the world and shaping the future of global aviation. Its story is a vital chapter in the history of flight.